Gentlemen, I'd like to invite you all to another gathering of the UNICEF virtual concourse for what I think is going to be a very, very exciting class altogether, Outlaw Cars. And if each of you would care to give a short bio, please, of yourselves, maybe start with you, Jay, and then go to Rod, and then to Peter.
Sure. I'm Jay Ward. I work at Pixar Animation Studios. I'm a creative director for the Cars franchise, for the world of Cars, but also just a big car nut, a judge at Pebble Beach and Hilton Head and Island, and just love cars and love car people. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm Rod Emery. I've been building, racing, restoring Porsche 356s and other Porsches for about 30 years. I did my first car when I was 14 years old in the back of my dad's Porsche parts business, which was called Porsche Parts Obsolete.
You can do the maths.
It's right. I come from a hot rodding family. My grandfather, Neil Emery, was really one of the pioneers of automotive customizing. He had a shop, Valley Custom Shop in Burbank, and built some of the most iconic traditional hot rods and custom cars, including the SoCal Streamliner, and did the initial metal work on the SoCal Belly Tanker, and then on to cars like the Dick Flint Roadster and the Ralph Gillette 40, and a lot of really iconic cars. So that's where I learned my skill and love for these cars, and then gained a knowledge and understanding of the Porsche brand from both my grandfather and my dad, because they both worked at Chick Iverson Volkswagen Porsche. So it's really in my blood, and just an honor to be here with three living legends, people that I really admire and look up to in this industry, and just happy to be here.
Peter.
Okay, I'm Peter Stevens. I'm a vehicle designer, transport designer, but particularly high-speed vehicles. I've always been a complete foolish petrol head. I still like to race vintage hot rods, and help run a car at Bonneville. I still got a couple of air-cooled things, but neither of them are Porsches nor VW in the garage. So yeah, I like the whole sound of this class. I thought it was cool. I put my hand up very strongly to be part of this one.
Drove a VW for the first time when I was 14 back in '68, and since then I've owned 35 Beetles and about another 15 or 20 air-cooled. I've drag raced VWs over the years. I still drag race a friend's one out in the States when I go out there. I've been editor of Hot Car magazine in the 70s when it was the biggest selling car magazine, editor of Custom Car magazine. I launched Volksworld and Ultra VW magazines and Classic Porsche magazine, which I'm still editor. And my last Porsche was well, ignoring the Cayman that I had for 1 year, was a 66 912 with a 2.2 911 motor on Gen V injection. And my current one is a 914 with a 2.1 litre motor on carbs on it, which is my current little hot rod I'm running around in. So basically I'm VW and Porsche guy since, yeah, mid-60s, I guess. So
I'm Alan de Cadenet. As you all know, I have never actually bought a new car. I like only driving old cars, flying old planes, riding old motorcycles, deal with a lot of old people, basically. It's all fun. I used to build my own cars, and my big ambition was always to try and be the first person to win the Le Mans 24-hour race with a homemade car. But I made the mistake of discussing this with a Frenchman called Jean Rondeau, and that's exactly what he did in 1980. So he beat me to it. But here I am, I'm going to host this show today. And gentlemen, I think what we might start out with is if each of you individually just gives us a brief description of how you see outlaw cars yourselves, what the definition might be for an outlaw car. We'll start with you, Jay, I think. We'll go the same order we just did.
Sure. And I think Rob will be able to go deeper into the term outlaw, because that came along with this particular group. When I was a kid, and I think Rod and I are probably about the same age, Volkswagens were always the feeder, because when you were a young guy, you couldn't afford, even back then when Porsches were cheaper, a Volkswagen was always your starter. I had a Karmann Ghia in high school. And the first thing we always did was we would modify them. We would hop them up. We would pull trim off of them. We would put the Bosch 009 distributor and twin Del Ordos and maybe an 1835 kit, and you would lower it. And you just would not leave a Volkswagen stock because it was just too square. And back then we just called it, personalizing our cars. I think the Outlaw thing is taking it one step further. And I think what's even made it makes more people's jaw drop now, as you've seen the values of early Porsches and some early Volkswagens like Transporters go through the roof, that people say, oh my gosh, you can't modify this, this beautiful stock 356 coupe. Poor Rod probably gets a call every day about that. But that personalization, I think, is Outlaws, doing something you're not supposed to do, but personalizing it to your taste.
Yeah. Rod, I think your take on this is quite interesting too.
Well, first of all, I have to compliment the brilliance of, the Porsche family for designing the Volkswagen platform and then the Porsche, because really, if you look at the design and the evolution of design, it really lent itself to customization, personalization, and taking a car and modifying it for multiple uses. They obviously built a car that was for transportation, but was easily adapted for rallying, racing, both on, off-road, whether it's the sand or the dirt or the ice, the cars just, performed so well. So obviously modifying these cars was something that people did from the very beginning. And, here in the US, hot rodding, when these cars first came out, hot rodding was really, blossoming in the 50s. And the people that loved a sports car, they took that, early Porsche or Volkswagen and said, I'm going to hot rod this out. There were a lot of really unique and neat cars that were built through the 50s, 60s, 70s that were modified Volkswagens and Porsches. The term outlaw, kind of really where it, I guess, attached itself to 356s and even Volkswagens. My family is credited to that, because my father had his Porsche parts business, and in the back of his Porsche parts business in Southern California, my dad and I were out there hot rodding, as we learned from my grandfather, our 356s, lowering them, taking the hubcaps off, polishing the drums, putting fog lights on them, and modifying them, just like Jay said, customizing them. And then a lot of my dad's customers that were Porsche, doing full Concours type Porsche 356 stuff were like, you guys are outlaws. You can't do this. It's blasphemy. You can't modify these cars. And so a jeweler friend of ours actually made a badge for the back of our little 356s. It's actually that little logo right there that said 356 Outlaws.
Oh, yeah.
And we put that badge on the back of our cars, and it was just for fun. And it kind of took, kind of got some traction. But in the early days, we weren't allowed on the Concours lawn with our 356s. And today, here we are, on the coolest little virtual Concours talking about, outlaw cars. So modifying has been going on from the very beginning. The term outlaws that attached itself to this has, kind of started with that 356 Outlaws logo. But so happy to see the acceptance and the growing enthusiasm for it, because I know that when Porsche first built these cars, they really intended for these cars to be loved, enjoyed, personalized, and used for every purpose you could possibly think of.
Yeah, I'd really like to hear Rod saying that his dad almost encouraged him with this, because one of my feelings about outlaw cars, and in a way, it ought to be that your parents are really unhappy that, you've taken this car and you're fiddling with it. I fiddle with cars all the time, always did, and continue to do so. And also, I like the fact that part of the outlaw thing, Porsche less so now, but if you fiddled with their cars at all, and with the race cars that we ran as Porsches, I loved the fact that we alarmed them or horrified them. I loved Jürgen Barth looking under the back of a 924, not believing we could lower it so much, until he said, but you changed the drive shafts. Well, of course, you know, and I love that, the fact that we're kind of needling them, you know, and that's what these cars do. That's what I really like about all of these outlaw things is, you know, they are a very personal statement. And the nice bit is you can make a personal statement without really spending a fortune. You know, VW is a great basis for doing that still, I think.
Well, it's a kind of dichotomy for me, this whole situation, especially with Porsche, because when you start racing, you look at Porsche, everyone says, have you seen what Porsche are doing? First car I ever raced internationally was a 904. Porsche going 906, 908, whatever. But it's strange that here I am revisiting what's done to Porsche 356s, for instance, as a Porsche 356 man. I've had a 356 for years and years. You bought them when they weren't very expensive, and you keep it going all the time. So I find it fascinating today to look at what Rod does, for instance, in workshops. And I do believe there was a situation where Dr. Ferry Porsche looked at one of Rod's cars in amazement, absolutely loved it, and then pronounced, I believe, in German, I think, good Lord, this is fantastic, just what we would do if we could. You see, that's the special thing, that skill and the creativity needed to produce an outlaw car that is super desirable. Especially, I think, the bodywork is one thing, entirely different. But when you look at 6-cylinder engines with 2 cylinders missing, I don't know where they go to make 4-cylinder engines that fit inside. You look at 901 gearboxes that have somehow got a 5th gear, which they never used to have, but now they have. I love all that. Anyway, I think we might go on now. I think, Jay, I'm going to need your help, please. We'll bring up most of the cars that are going to eventually be judged. And if you three gentlemen would like to pass your comments as they come up.
All right, this is a 58 Acrasa. I don't know if you guys know this car. That obviously has a hand-formed body on it.
It's right-hand
Yeah.
drive. Is this the one made in England?
Yes. And this is it while it's under construction. So you've got some empty wheels on it there.
So yeah, the story that I understand with this car is that the chassis and running gear and stuff was built, you know, back in period, but it never had a body built on it, if I'm correct. And then from there, you know, a European craftsman, you know, has been building a body in the spirit of, I think, what it was supposed to have. And I followed the, you know, the craftsmanship and build on this, and he's just put so much work and effort and thought into it. And I think just recently he posted some old school kind of aerodynamic testing with it, with tape and stickers on it as he was out driving it. But it's been fun to watch this evolve over the years. And just recently he's been driving the heck out of it, right, on the ice and road courses and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I think he built this as what they would have called a sports special, or as a, you know, a little bit like what Bill Devin would have done in the U.S., where you would have these different bodies that all had these unique chassis underneath. This has definitely got some Porsche lines going on. Alan, you were talking about the 904, and those pontoon front fenders have a little bit of 904, 906 inspiration on it.
Well, I mean, Alan knows that I'm often outspoken. It's fine, but it's not an outlaw, you know, because there is, if you like, so little of the original car left, you know, that it's, to me, it's something else, you know, like the way an Abarth Porsche, you know, it's something else. And for me, I don't see it fitting in this category, you know.
More of a spec.
Yeah, it's a coach built. It's a coach built car, really. I mean, I think they used a roof off of something, but everything else is completely hand formed.
Right.
Maybe a common gear roof.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I am seeing some that quarter window looks suspicious. Yeah, doesn't it? Ah, good eye.
Well, yeah, it is. Would any of you not want to sit in that and take it for a drive and pronounce upon its handling and braking? It's a cute looking little car to me. I love the idea that someone's hand built virtually all that you look at. And
you know what? it is the spirit of Porsche to build a giant killer, right? It's the spirit of them to take a 1.5, 1.6 liter engine with a car that's so light that it dominates its class. That's what the 550 did. And this has that kind of spirit of power to weight ratio. It probably has less than 100 horsepower, but it would embarrass a lot of bigger cars.
Oh,
Elwin's car. Yes, yes.
excuse me.
Yeah. I love the fact that he wanted a lightweight. He knew what they were. He knew he would never be able to afford one or to buy one. And the mystique of them, Rod knows the mystique of these cars very, very well. I'll let him talk. But I think it's fabulous that he created his own homage to the lightweights.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to see this car in person at Goodwood August of last year. We were there with the Porsche Club of Great Britain, and it was one of the first times he really took it out and drove it on the track, and so much detail, so much thought went into this car. Really, as a car that's inspired by the early Gamund cars that raced at Le Mans, like the number 46 that I restored, or this is really I would say more in the spirit of of the way that they ran the cars, say at Montfleury or some of the speed trials. Got the narrow wheel spats on it. He did some fun stuff. This car also has a Judson supercharger on it, which is pretty cool, with its little VW type engine, because the early 356 engine obviously is a derivative of the Volkswagen engine. And so a lot of those performance bits that you would have on VWs, O'Cross's stuff, Judson stuff, went on these early 356s. So he did a great job. The craftsmanship and level of detail was just really, really cool to see. Love this car.
Know a bit of the background of it from what Dell wrote. I mean, he bought it in the 70s as a, £350 or whatever he paid for it, and then got out of his depth with it, but always had this image in his mind. He wanted to recreate something along the lines of the world famous Gamund Le Mans car, but Dell being very much into design, having been a creative director in advertising all his life, was picking and choosing little elements from different cars around the world to create his own perfect 356. And to me, it embodied the concept of an outlaw, 10, 15 years probably before the outlaw movement kind of started, because it was at a time when a Pre-A was very much a rarity, and very few were being restored. And so he had one which he could have restored and chose to build a hot rod out of it, and then starts doing crazy stuff like I found in the Judson supercharger in the States, because he had this image of this idea of doing the supercharged motor for it. And in fact, we plan to build and at some point in the future, we're going to build a twin Judson blown motor for it. But funny thing is, when he first got it on the road, he rushed. He said, "Oh, can you drive it around the block? I'll rush in and get the video camera." And he came out and he's got about 30 seconds of battery life on the video camera. And I drove it around the block, pulled up outside his house and fell out, and just said, "Delwyn," he said, "what do you think?" I said, "It's the worst car I've ever driven in my life." And it was terrible at the time. It was all the, sloppy kingpins and brakes to the floor and everything. But it was the stepping stone to creating this thing of what I think is absolute beauty now. And it's just so different. It's wonderful. It follows no rules whatsoever. And to me, it's what an outlaw is all about. It's one man's dream of his perfect car.
Well, we're getting serious now, aren't we?
I've got to say, not many people outlaw Type 2 buses. Buses do get slammed to the ground. They usually don't have the same spirit of outlaw. Rod, I'd like to kind of know your thoughts, because transporters are awesome. They have a special place in my heart because they're just great. They're just fun and they do so many great things. You do see them modified where guys just slam them, but it's pretty rare that you see them modified for performance. There's been some, but not that many. I just want to get your thoughts on this as a quote unquote outlaw.
Well, I mean, a lot of the ones that I see are modified for performance. They're hiding it underneath. you know, so many buses these days have big Type 4 engines in them, or, you know, a lot of guys are putting 911 engines in them. I've done a couple with 911 engines and stuff, but you know, what I like about this one in particular is, you know, he kept it kind of old school, you know, looking and traditional, but, you know, added performance and a lot of little special touches. You know, no bumpers, all kinds of negative camber in the back, you know, but definitely he's clearly done something, you know, personal to this.
For me, an Outlaw is something that is sort of edgy and, you know, performance oriented and just generally going against the flow. But to me, there's no way that a bus can be considered an outlaw as such. To me, an outlaw is more like, you know, thinking back to the street rod world of the sort of, you know, 29A on 32 rails, flathead motor, kind of sticking two fingers up at conformity. And this is a nicely restored bus, which happens to have a Judson supercharged motor in it and sprint style wheels. But it's, to me, it lacks that kind of edginess that an outlaw has to have. But that's just me. So.
Interestingly enough, in the early 60s, people who were racing Formula 3, let's say, in Europe, you got a Volkswagen pickup, or you cut back off one of these vans, and your Formula 3 car was jammed in the back there with whatever spares you happened to have. But the one thing that was so desirable was to take out the Volkswagen engine and drop in a Porsche lump, so that you had some grunt to go down things like, well, motorways and you know, get up a hill to go over into, say, Italy before the motorways were built.
Yeah. No, sticking a 356 motor in the back of a bus was an art form in its day. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I very much like it. I had a Type 2, but I had a bay window. And at first I modified it actually to go off-road trials, just to piss off people with Land Rovers, because you can make fiddle brakes very easily out of the handbrake. It was cool. And then I decided to go the other way and lower it. I have to say, one thing I always hated was negative camber. And this, because this has got the early Portal axles, to get it low, you have to give it too much camber. And you know, I've never been a fan of negative camber.
Yeah, well, what they do on it is fit a straight axle conversion and takes the reduction boxes off it.
Absolutely.
Which is what's been done to this. So.
Oh, has it? Well, it's still,
Well, then just lowered it, so it's then brought the camber back in. But
but you're right in what you say. There's nothing edgy about it that makes it feel like an outlaw. Which has to be a little bit edgy, the outlaw, I think, you know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move on just for sake of time, because we have so many cars to get through.
Yeah. Go.
Okay. The Clark Beetle. So this is a little bit later Beetle. This has got to be 68 or later, I'm guessing.
It's a 67. Yeah,
67 or later. Yeah, 67 is when they started to sort of square some bits up on them. Runs Porsche wheels on it. This reminds me and Rod will remember this too, is what the cowbug movement we used to have here in California in the 70s and 80s, when the cowbug look, everybody's doing the minty green, bright red.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it goes back further. I mean, the cowlook started in the sort of early to mid 60s. The club I belonged to, Decliner Panzers, who was formed in 65. And I've written various books on the California look and its history and whatever. Again, this car it's fantastic. Two brothers built it in a single garage without any power, whatever. It actually follows a lot of rules, which you know, kind of end up being sort of laid down by the people in the know.
I've never seen that California tag before. I've lived here all my life, and that one does not look familiar to me.
No, it's a British car, yeah.
That's a 67 number plate. Interestingly enough, that paint is called Blue Blood Red. It's about as red as anything can get, so I'm told.
Yeah.
And it's another
without being orange.
It's a fabulous car, yeah.
Yeah, but is it? I mean, my feeling is wouldn't need to spend too much time because I don't think it fits the kind of brief that we discussed amongst ourselves earlier, does it?
No.
I'm sure Alan likes the radial behind it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a spectacular looking machine, that's sure.
Yeah.
That exhaust was so popular too.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that system in a while, but those used to be everywhere. That, and then the what was the Stinger, the one that just like, so popular. Not the best for rear impact, but anyway. Yeah, this car, you know, it's I don't know if this is an Outlaw. I don't know if come on, look, this is the definition. This is the definition of an Outlaw. This is quintessential beauty. I mean, this is a 356 and there's no doubt about it, and yet everything you look on it has been touched and modified and made more beautiful using bits from other Porsches, and I think it's stunning.
Yeah.
Is this the Ellie Kogan car, Rod?
Yeah, this is a car that we finished for Eli that has Auto Club in in Scottsdale, Arizona, and you know, he wanted a car that was, you know, a 356, but you know, I had the freedom to reshape and change every line and move things around, which is what I love to do. You know, I personally am a little biased, but I love this car. You know, the drip rails have been removed, the B pillar's been changed, the corners and the windows have been, you know, reshaped. You know, underneath it's got 260 horsepower and 901 gearbox that we talked about earlier, and big brakes. But yeah, this is a car that was really fun to do. We just recently finished that one earlier this year.
That's terrific in that view, isn't it? Yep.
Yeah. The one thing I dislike on the car is where you got the badge on the side that says special. I just wondered who was behind that, because it's kind of like saying this car is special, but you don't actually need to say it's special.
Yeah, well, you'll notice that on a few of my cars, just because it's you know, any car that I build that I'm actually modifying the body lines. You know, I build cars that I call Outlaws, which are more traditional body shape, but all the hot rod stuff. But the cars that I build where I'm changing, like drastically changing the body lines, you know, I call an Emery special. So yeah, you know, it's just a badge that that I put on a few of the cars.
Yeah, Continental badge. You used to see 356 that had Continental, which I think is cool. It doesn't.
Rob, I want to ask you a question, if I may. Do any of your customers ever bring a car back to you that you've done and ask you to upgrade it, change it, start putting things on that you've come up with that they've seen that they like? I mean, do you upgrade your machinery if asked to do so?
Yeah, I do, but mostly just on the mechanical side. You know, once I do a design for a car and kind of, you know, put the overall look on it, I don't tend to change the look and overall aesthetic of the car. But for example, on the engine, running gear, transmission, steering, anything that I build on the newer cars, I try to figure out how I can retrofit it onto older builds. For example, I've got a car in the shop right now that we built in 2012, and we're adding air conditioning to it, and which most Porsche purists would say, why would you do that? But we're adding AC, and also, you know, we oftentimes will update the engine or add rack and pinion steering to them. So yeah, we definitely will do upgrades.
Rod, did they ask for bumpers, or did you persuade them with bumpers?
You know, it just really just depends on the design of the car that I'm doing. You know, on this car in particular, I wanted bumpers just because I wanted to kind of finish off that bottom edge. But on some of them, we eliminate them. Like on my personal car, I don't have bumpers.
Yeah. Just I've got a garage full of bumpers that I've taken off projects even that have gone, and I've kept the bumpers because because I mean that is such a divine shape without bumpers. Anyway, no problem. But if the client likes it, it's cool, isn't it? I mean, it's definitely super cool. So is the next one. I can see where the cursor is hovering.
The car, Rob, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, you know, we're going to go through a couple of my cars here just because, you know, myself and a couple customers submitted them. But this is my personal car, and again, it says special there, Keith, just because this is the first car.
You're allowed. That one's really special because it was the first one.
This was the first car where I heavily modified all the lines and really taking, you know, advice and kind of styling cues from stuff like my grandfather and father did back in the day. You know, my grandfather always took cars and tried to enhance or evolve the design. You look at most of his custom cars, and you know, he'd take a you know 50 Oldsmobile and section it, or you know, channel it, and so for me, it was taking a 356 and just eliminating some of that girth or that weight in the middle of the car, and I did that by rolling the rockers all the way under and leaning the nose back, leaning the windshield back, raising the wheel arches, lengthening the tail, and just changing, you know, as many body lines, but using all factory sheet metal to do it. Just, you know, even though it's a special bodied car, it's still all Porsche sheet metal. It's just reconfigured. And I did this car in 1998, and it's still here in the family stable. And my wife and I, you know, still enjoy it to this day.
How much input did Amy, Mrs. Emery, have in that car? Did she start telling you things that she did like, didn't like, make her more comfortable? Because I can't get my wife to sit in my 356 to save her life. So I'd like to know how you did that.
When we did this car, it was, you know, we started it in 1997. We'd only been married a year. And she did all the paint stripping on every, like we didn't media blast the cars back then because we just didn't have access to a media blaster. So she physically stripped the entire car, helped me cut out all the rusted sheet metal, and was involved in the whole process. So this truly is a car that Amy and I built together. And, you know, to help her put up with our road trips in it, I put a little VW, or a little vase on the dash that you see on so many Volkswagens, and made sure that there was a fresh flower in the on the dash for her, so that you know, she could enjoy the drive a little bit more. But yeah, we had a lot of fun building this car together.
Thank you very much, Rod, for that Marriage Advice Bureau information, because that could be very helpful to a lot of people who see this video.
I was going to say that to you, Alan. I hope you're listening.
I have paid attention. I have made notes. I'm looking forward to not having to spend so much time on my own in my car.
The secret is the bud vase, Alan. You've learned the secret is the bud vase. You're fine.
It's a very beautiful artistic bit of kit, isn't it? Look at it. It's absolutely delicious.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to, there is one more Emery car, but I'm going to skip over it so we can mix things up a bit, and then we'll go back to the last Emery car. Is that okay with everyone?
Okay. Yep. You're going to the white.
This one,
the Beetle, yeah.
Yeah, this one had me scratching my head a bit. It looks so much like just a stock Beetle with a across a, you know, engine. I see the leather strap on the hood, but otherwise it felt very much like this would be almost a sleeper, what I would call a sleeper, as opposed to an Outlaw, where you're going up against a stock Beetle and then it's got 90 horsepower instead of 36.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have a 51 split window Beetle, which had the same O'Cross motor in it, and it was great because it meant you could cruise at 75 miles an hour as opposed to 55, and which surprised a lot of people. But it was more a fun period tuning deal rather than like going the whole Outlaw sort of thing. Though, you know, everything about the car is bog stock apart from the engine or drivetrain. So it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't have, as saying, that edginess, if you like, that I think warrants the Outlaw sort of title. But
yeah, I mean, that's what, more sleeper.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
All right. Well, here's another one that is got a bit more modification in terms of the body. I'm guessing 57 by the snail front turn signals and the Wolfsburg badge. And this is Rev's car.
Yeah, so and this used to be a lot more Outlaw because this is the one from Rev's, which up until relatively recently had a 4-cam Carrera motor in it, which they now obviously realise is worth more money by putting back into a 550 or a 356 Carrera, and have put a big VW Type 4 motor in the back of it, which I personally feel is now taken the car down off its pedestal and just made it another big engined VW bug, as opposed to, in many ways, the ultimate outlaw bug of, having a $250,000 motor put in the back of a $2,000 bug, which I think
Right.
Do you know,
was
it
all
never
very
ran
cool.
properly. It never ran properly in there, the
No,
Carrera motor, which
it
was,
probably didn't.
whether
Yeah.
it didn't like being there because of I don't know, the environment. But
No, yeah, it was like an organ transplant where the body rejects the organ, except it was the other way around. The organ was rejecting the body it was in, I think. So
What I like about this car is that it's got the most excellent bones when you think that Troutman and
Yeah.
Barnes started it. And
yeah.
they built the Scarabs and the Chaparrals.
yeah,
I mean, at least engineerically, this was all good stuff. And I think that having the 4-cam motor in the back, that was really rather cool, because oblivious to the fact it had become a pricey unit, there was a time, I remember when I was racing a RSK a long, long time ago, those motors, nobody wanted them because they no one could fix them. You've got
people would blow up their Carreras, take them back to the factory, and have a pushrod motor put in its place.
and
Because it was less hassle.
Today, I think you can get far more horsepower out of a 4-cylinder pushrod engine anyway. Why risk hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage just for the sake of the look? However, I think that's very cool. If I was judging one of these cars and I saw a 4-cam in the back, I'd be impressed if he'd left it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I clicked and it moved on to the next car, but go ahead, keep speaking.
I was just going to say that, the Collier bug has always been one of my favorites from the first time I saw it. And I will agree with Keith for sure. It was a very special car with the 4-cam engine in it. It also has 911 rear suspension, 901 gearbox, so many cool little things. There's a door on the rear fender for the oil tank. There's just so many subtle, cool details on that thing that made it very, very special. I was pretty bummed to see they pulled the 4-cam out of it, because I don't know, that 4-cam's probably sitting on a pedestal in the museum now on display. And to me, they should have just given it a little more tweaks and made it run good. And that bug, was legendary that way. To me, if it had the 4-cam engine, no doubt to me, out of this class, would be my favorite. Still pretty cool. They did a flat fan, setup on the Type 4, which is, a really cool add to the car. But like he said, now it's at the top of I think quality hot rodded bugs now, but definitely with the 4-cam, it was special.
I would say, Rod, that 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, that's pretty
cool.
even today, isn't it? So. But I agree with you. If it had the 4-cam in the back, I'd be excited. It's like a Patek Philippe watch with a quartz movement.
Well, the problem, Alan, is that everybody here on the panel knows what it was, and so there's a degree of disappointment there. And it always surprises me that, because Miles likes a point in history that he can absolutely focus his car on. And the point in history was when this was made, and that's not what we're now seeing. So I think we all feel a bit disappointed that we're not seeing the real thing.
I'm going to move on just for sake of time, because we
do.
All right, so we have a 356 Speedster, a late one, obviously.
I'll raise my hand real quick on this. Richie, I believe this is a car that, and Keith, you would know, but this is one that Richie did, right? This is one of his cars. And Richie has been, an inspiring guy from the very beginning, all with his VW stuff and always pushing the limits on 356s. And to me, this is a cool little car. It's a car that screams outlaw. He's removed the bumpers. He's put some spears on the fenders, and it's got different wheels and polished drums, and just, you can see the exhaust hanging out of the back. This is traditional take your 356 and hot rod it out and drive the heck out of it. And cool little car.
And I think, putting it in the context of the UK environment, nobody before Richie was doing stuff like putting the scallops or whatever on the front fenders and doing this kind of stuff to what is, a very, presumably it's a convertible D or something, is a very collectible car. Nobody else was doing it. And it's just that, his roots, again, a little bit like mine with, VWs and hot rods and whatever. And it was just like, well, it's a car, so let's modify and screw what anybody else says. And for a while, people, all the purists over here was tearing their hair out. And now those purists go to Richie to buy all their parts off him. So, he's one.
This was a convertible, Keith, and not a Speedster originally.
Yeah, I think it's a convertible D.
Yeah.
It's a 60 Roadster.
Oh, 60.
So
right.
61 Roadster.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's nice.
Pioneer, isn't he, as well? You see, I think it's always, what's interesting to me is when you get something that's come from a pioneer producer of machinery like this. He's put his own ideas in there, and they're different, but you see people warm up to something that works. It's just like Dr. Ferry Porsche coming along and saying, wow, we'd have done this if we could, as I said. This is the exciting thing about all this. You don't know what's going to work and what's going to be desirable, and then suddenly there's a feeding frenzy to have it. So I like that.
If you think about the history of the real Porsche Speedster, Max Hoffman, that was a request from the U.S. for something lighter, less stuff that was cheap and fast, and that was the birth of the Speedster. It's only later that they became more valuable than a convertible. So that spirit does run through I think everything. With one other thing I want to say very quickly was when Jeff talked about this class, he was just going to have Porsches, and I said you got to have Volkswagens as well. I really feel that those two lie right next to each other, and that they are synonymous. So,
all right,
I agree.
For the sake of time, this one is from Workshop 5001.
Yes.
So yeah, this car, is very well built. Marlon and his team, a lot in the same spirit of the car that we just saw that Richie did, but this was a complete build, like ground up to be kind of what I think 5001 calls their California car, low windshield and roll bar. And it has a 4-cylinder 911 engine, similar to the type of engine that I run in a lot of my cars. But yeah, it's a real high quality build. Lots of, hidden little gems and tricks that they put into it. And, definitely in the outlaw spirit, because it's pretty much everything on it's modified.
Have you got the front view, Jay? We got the interior.
They gave me, unfortunately, their photos were not great. There was no front 3/4 of the car. There was a chopped off front portion, but their photos were less.
Yeah, when I looked through them, I couldn't find it.
Yeah, the photos of this car in particular were letting me down. So this is what I have.
This is a car that's got the 5th speed into that 501 gearbox, I think. Now, I was told that was not possible to do that, but Rod, how do you get the 5th speed?
So
4-speed gearbox.
Well, the 901 gearbox, originated from the 912s or the early 911s, and then they used it in the 912s, and it came in both a 4-speed and 5-speed configuration. So a lot of the 912s ran the 4-speed, but you could still get a 912 with a 5-speed, and then most of the 911s ran a 5-speed. But that aluminum case gearbox that was 64 to 68 was 4 or 5-speed. This car still has a swing axle gearbox in it. And I don't know if they used the Hayden at Wevo, a transmission builder, built a gearbox where he takes a 356 gearbox and makes it a 5-speed. But I believe this still has a traditional 356 type transmission because I know it is swing axle.
I remember back in the Targa Florio days when we used to go down to do that race, Porsche's built special gearboxes for that because you only use 3 speeds on 40 miles of the 45-mile lap. And then you had a very long 4th gear so that you could get down that 5 miles straight at whatever, 30, 40 miles an hour. So that was always interesting, and it always used to amaze me that Porsche could think of things like that. The rest of us, we just drove down in our Porsches from London to Sicily to do the race, and these guys had really been down there for 2 months working out what to do, which is why they came first and we came last, of course.
Yes.
I'm moving on to a 911.
Oh.
This is also from 5000. This car is a very fast car. I know that this is one that they built. I think it's a 74, so it's first year of a G body, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not sure what year they started with. I saw this car. Actually, these photos were taken in the Peterson Museum vault, but I saw the car when it was down there in an exhibit. And again, you know, the guys at 5001, Marlon does, you know, really clean work. You know, again, everything on this thing was modified and big power and kind of bold red interior. You know, it's a hot rod 911, you know, kind of more R group kind of style car, but definitely well built.
That's a 3.8 liter engine in there, I think, isn't it? It's a very grunty machine indeed.
It was born with a 2.7, and a lot of guys would stick in a 3.0 from a 911 SC or maybe a 3.2. But yeah, you can keep going.
Yeah.
That's
we have
money.
Blue, by the way, as well. That color, I rather like that as well.
I do. I like Gulf blues. I like, you know, the Mexico blue, Essen blue, all those nice light blues in the Porsche world I'm a sucker for all of those.
Just not with a red interior.
Well, okay, go on. Click it.
Last car. I thought this one was pretty special because of Rod built it and the car and the owner, so it'd be a good one to end on, I thought.
I'll let Peter talk about it first.
Well, I will do, because I know the car, and we escaped from Amelia Island, which was just a drudge, and went out in the car instead, actually. I mean, it's, you know, I think it's just super because everything, all the detail is in sympathy with every other detail. There's not a detail that clashes with the other pieces, you know? So whether it's the little hinges up for the engine cover at the back, you know, or the way that seat belts are done, or the little catch for the filter in the middle of the bonnet, you know, it is all perfectly done, I would have to say, you know, and the black steel wheels just look terrific. I mean, yeah, I'm a sucker for this car, so I'm bound to say this, but it works as well as it looks too, which I think is good, you know. And everywhere you are, you know, we stop for gas and you look under the hood and it's all just, you know, as it kind of should be for this kind of car. And it to me, because strangely enough, these were not as popular, I think, Rod, were they, as the straight, you know, little coupe, you know, with this top. They were, you know, and it was, I mean, it was a brave choice. And the fact that you're showing two of them there, it's a brave choice to take, you know, because again, you know, a guy who thinks he's a purist might not know, you know, that they did build cars like that.
This is what happens when you get two men of style and taste that meet together. One is the owner, one is the builder.
Yeah.
Style and taste. You don't just double it, you square it when two people get together. And I think that's what you've got here. It's about as delicious and tasty and as desirable as anything in the outlaw world can be, this car. I think personally, it's just delicious.
You could have it on a stick and lick it, you know.
Yes.
Out of interest, Rod, was John Oates a serial Porsche owner, or did he come and want an Outlaw 356? I mean, just because, you know, it was the thing to have, or what?
So John, you know, when in the late 70s, when he first, you know, made it big or had some money, he bought a 930 turbo, and that's where his love for Porsches really began. And then a number of years later, he ordered a G body 911 special colors, all that stuff. And he had that for years. And then he had a Speedster. He also has a little bit of history in he raced a 924 GTR, you know, in some of the IMSA races. So he has a history with Porsche. But you know, things happen in life, and he kind of fell away from cars, and it wasn't an important thing to him. And then about four years ago, he, out of the blue, I got a call from him, and he says, Rod, he goes, you know, I'm missing something in my life. My love for cars and design, and he said, I'm turning 70 years old, and I would love to have you build a car, you know, special built car for me that I can gift myself for my 70th birthday. And he says, I want something that's unique. And that's where it began. You know, he's not a relatively tall person. He's about, you know, he's, you know, a little bit shorter than me, but so there were some things that we did to accommodate him, you know, raising the seat. We lowered the entire cowl and dash down on the car. We made the configuration. We started there. We started with the placement of him, and then built out a design from there, leaning the windshield back and lowering the roof line and raking the line back. And we started with a B coupe that had been crashed heavily in the front. And because, you know, when you're building an outlaw car, there's no rules. So he loved the A style front end. So I put the new nose on, but when I did, I leaned it back to give the headlights a little more angle, a little more of a flow. So we just had a really amazing time building this car, and it was his gift to himself for his 70th birthday.
Oh, very cool. Cool.
What's nice is that he enjoyed the whole process. You know, he loved the fact that he was involved in every little detail, you know, of the thing. I think, I mean, the 924 GTR was interesting because that was Richard Lloyd's car, and I ran it at the Daytona 24 Hours, and then afterwards we did a 3-hour race with John. He was actually a handy driver as well. You know, he was good.
It's a wonderfully unique car owned by a wonderfully unique.
Coming on, Keith, and managing to dodge the fact that you weren't able to be there at the beginning, because that's a very noble contribution. So
that's right.
Very much indeed for that. And I did mention having to wind up sooner or later, because we could go on, I'm quite sure, for an awful lot longer. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Contribution, and I think that hopefully this will be considered one of the finest and better rendezvous that's taken place for our UNICEF virtual concours. It's a very important cause, and I'm very proud, I'm sure you are too, that we've all been able to make a serious contribution towards it. And thank you all very, very much indeed.